So more about what Florida is doing to improve driver safety and less fatalities. They did sign this agreement in 2016. However, death rates have increased since then. And they put together just a bunch of data about Florida in 2016. Most striking is the 80% drive alone, and very few use public transit. I'm actually surprised that it's that much. And there is a large growth in population and in visitors. And of course, everything is increasing. The total fatalities nationwide, Florida vehicle miles traveled, Florida gross domestic product, Florida population. So as our population and our economy grows, our fatalities also increase with the population. But we can feed two birds with one feeder. As we learned a lot about in class, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve sustainability and decrease our carbon footprint. And it really starts with emissions, vehicle emissions. And we did talk about food and other things, but vehicle emissions is a huge part. And so we can see that it's mostly passenger cars, which is interesting because that was the highest death rates. And then, of course, medium and heavy trucks, interesting. This is CO2 emissions by state. This is Florida right here. So ours is pretty high. I think this is California and Texas. So this is not per capita. This is just by state. And that does actually correspond with the death tolls, not per capita, just in general. And then this is emissions per capita, which I thought was interesting, that there was not a lot of correlation between the safest, the best 5 ratings over the past 10 years states and their CO2 emissions. I thought that there would be a direct correlation, but there really was not. The only similarity that I saw was that the gas prices in the two top states, I believe it was Iowa and Wyoming, the CO2 emissions were really high, and the price of gas was relatively low in comparison to other states. And so Florida doesn't have a high CO2 emission per capita, which I also think is pretty surprising. And so everyone took this survey, as you can see. If you remember, so I wanted to see what people would actually do, how we would actually implement this, what people would be more inclined to do. So in order to do that, I found out people's average daily commute is actually really far, and all of these were actually people that felt the need to say it's more than 10 or more. It's like 25 or more, or 30. But it's still all the same. So a lot of people would benefit from a very long distance shuttle. And most people said that they were inclined to take a shuttle over biking or walking, although biking and walking did have high numbers. And then, of course, the timing is a big thing. People care about their timing. People care about, well, of course, if they live closer, they would do it. But I think that's a timing-related thing. People were writing in that, and so I went ahead and made one, a bar for that. And then, of course, safety is pretty high. And some people say they already do. I think that's because of the shuttle at FGCU. I don't think they're talking about public transportation or biking. And then here you see that buses are actually very favorable, and that's when I started looking more into busing than just focusing on biking, because I realized that was definitely something that I should be focusing on. Public busing, not the campus shuttle. A lot of people said that they used it in a different community, which I thought was very interesting. but they don't use it here. And they would use it if it were reliable and if it were quicker and they knew they weren't going to be late. And then some added value. People talked about the price of gas. People talked about the heat and beautification, surprisingly. In a lot of the comments, people talked about the trees, the photos with trees.